Across America, there are many interesting and important highways that connect the country. And one of the things I find the most interesting about the US is how different regions are developed. The western US is very different from the east, and was developed a lot later on in history. This means that there are some pretty major differences seen between the two sides of the country. So today I want to explore that, give an overview of the highways on either coast of the country, and then compare them to each other. Before that, though, I wanted to quickly ask if you would please consider subscribing to the channel. We make content like this every single week, so if you're interested in these fun geography topics, I highly suggest you subscribe to the channel. Thank you. So to start comparing, we have to go over the cities that make up the country's two coasts and look at the difference in how they're laid out. Starting at the farthest south region of Florida with Miami. So Miami is in a very thin stretch of land in between the Atlantic Ocean and the Everglades. This has made for a lot of very major roads, especially going north-south. I-95 is the main interstate that runs through the city, going north to south. I-195 and 395 comes off of I-95, going towards the coast connecting to Miami Beach. Miami has a lot of important state highway routes, including State Route 836 stretching east-west from the downtown, State Route 826 going north-south, and the Ronald Reagan Turnpike. Because this is a city in Florida, the expansion is a lot newer. So we see a lot less difference from western expansion, but as we move farther north, that will change. Moving to the farthest south major city on the west coast, we have San Diego. Now, immediately we notice how the mountains affect everything. The city is a lot less gridded, and the freeways are basically tucked in wherever they fit. I-5 is the main north-south interstate in the city, going along the downtown to the north and east. I-8 comes off of I-5 and serves as a major east-west interstate, passing through the north part of the metro into La Mesa and El Cajon. I-805 serves as an eastern spur to I-5 and moves off the coast to meet the more inner parts of the metro. I-15 also comes into the city even farther east before connecting and ending at I-805. State routes 94, 54, 125, and 52 also play a major role in the city. Next, we move farther north on the eastern coast, where we find Jacksonville. Jacksonville is another city built on a major coastal interstate, I-95. The highway runs through the downtown, passing to the south and west. The major east-west interstate is I-10, which terminates in the city at the west end of the downtown. Jacksonville has a full beltway around the metro, this being I-295. State Route 115 and U.S. Highway 1 also serve as major routes in the city. Moving back to the west, we have the major city of Los Angeles. This is probably the best example in today's video of a city built around the interstate system. There's so much going on throughout the metropolitan area, and it seems like freeways play a very major role in that. I-5 moves through the city as the most major north-south route, with I-405 serving as a more western counterpart. I-10 goes west from the Santa Monica Pier and serves as the most major east-west route. I-110 goes to the south from the downtown, and I-105 goes west from LAX. I-710 connects the downtown to Long Beach, and I-15 goes through the far east part of the metro near San Bernardino and Corona. The city has so many interstates and highways all around, making for an extremely hectic and crazy development. Back to the East Coast, I'm going to make a pretty large jump here to Washington, D.C. This is a city that saw a lot of freeway revolts and some very questionable interstates and highways. This is yet another city where the main north-south route is going to be I-95, although it actually does go completely around the city. The real major downtown route would be I-395, which goes into the actual district and tunnels under the U.S. Capitol area. I-695 comes off of it going to the east, and then I-295 stretches to the south from there on the east side of the Potomac River. I-66 is the main east-west interstate that goes into the metro. It mainly serves Arlington, Virginia, but briefly goes into the district over a bridge before ending. DC is also home to the Capitol Beltway, which travels around the metro through Virginia and Maryland, and is known for its bad traffic. Next, we move back to the west where we find San Francisco. This is another city pretty clearly built into the terrain around it. The whole Bay Area has been built into thin stretches of land around the San Francisco Bay, which results in less room for freeways, putting more stress on the already built ones. I-80 is the most major highway through the metro, coming from the Central Valley into the Bay Area and over from Oakland to San Francisco on the Bay Bridge. The city of San Francisco has some pretty major freeway revolts, so it has a lot less than normal cities of its time. I-280 goes from the downtown and connects it into San Jose. I-880 does the same on the other side of the bay with Oakland. I-580 connects from San Rafael through Oakland and into the Central Valley. U.S. Highway 101 also serves a pretty major purpose with connecting San Francisco to San Jose. The whole Bay Area is limited by its natural terrain more than almost any other city in the country. Next, we move back to the East Coast with Philadelphia. This is a city with noticeably less freeways than some of the cities we've looked at so far. It's another city where I-95 passes through, with it going to the east of the downtown on the Delaware River. I-76 comes from the northwest into the town before running on the west and south sides of the city. I-676 serves as the north barrier to the downtown, connecting I-76 to I-95. It then crosses over the river into Camden, New Jersey, before turning south and meeting back up with I-76. I-476 and 276 serve as an outer beltway on the Pennsylvania side, but there's clearly a lot less going on as far as freeways go than you might expect. Moving back out west, we have Portland, Oregon, a city very active in the freeway revolt movement. With the time period it was developed, you'd expect a lot more freeways, and even though there's still a lot of them, there definitely could be more. I-5 is a major north-south route, coming into the downtown from the south and then passing over the Willamette River before continuing to the north. I-405 comes out of it to the west and then forms a loop around the downtown. I-84 is the major east-south route, kind of squiggling around the eastern part of the metro before terminating at the downtown. I-205 travels north-south through the eastern part of the metro, linking back into I-5 on both sides. On the western side of the downtown, we see US 26, which goes through Beaverton and Hillsborough, with State Route 217 connecting it to I-5. Moving back to the east, we have New York City, which has so much going on it would be impossible to go through it all. I-95 passes through the metro, avoiding the main city before continuing north. I-78 comes into the city going east-west before terminating in Manhattan. The more urban parts of the city have less freeways, because it was simply too built up already when freeways became a widely accepted idea. I-278 does run from Staten Island all the way up through Brooklyn and Harlem, though, and the Long Island Expressway, or I-495, comes out from Manhattan and works its way fully across the island. There are definitely a lot of freeways, especially in the northern part of the metro, but it could have been so much worse for being the largest city in the country. Moving back out west, we have our farthest north city, Seattle. Seattle will be our final city on I-5, which heads through the downtown on the east side. It also has a counterpart, I-405, which serves the same purpose, but on the other side of Lake Washington. I-90 is the main east-west interstate heading over Lake Washington and into the downtown where it terminates. Further south, we see State Route 518, 509, and 99 serving as important freeway routes. But overall, there's not as much going on in Seattle as you might expect from a western city. Finally, we head back east for Boston, a city with a very divisive freeway history. For this one, the main north-south interstate is I-93, which passes straight under the downtown as a tunnel. I-90 moves east-west and passes just south of the downtown before tunneling under the bay and ending near the airport. This all involves the major Big Dig project that occurred, completely redefining freeway travel in the downtown area, mostly moving it underground. You also still have I-95, which serves as an outer beltway to the city. So there we go, you've now seen how the interstates are laid out in some of the major cities on either coastal area. I've given you enough info to make out the differences for yourself, but there are some things I think really make the difference here. In the east, it feels like the highways have been built around the city, around the historic areas and the already built neighborhoods. It's harder to plan them out, and you see a lot more of these really curvy stretches of highway where you can tell it was not easy to fit it in. If we move to the west, you see a lot less of that. The city is more so built around the highways. They play a very major role in how the city's developed and matter to every traveler's day. As well as this, though, there are some more comparisons to be made between the two coasts. In the east, we see one major highway in all of these cities, I-95. The highway is the iconic East Coast connector that goes from Miami to the Canadian border, and would show you everything there is to see on the Atlantic coast if you took it from one end to the other. In the west, we see the same thing with I-5. The main difference here is that I-5 does not hit San Francisco, instead staying in the Central Valley, but it's still a major coastal interstate that matters so much to the economy of this region. Another comparison to be made is the cities with the worst traffic. Now, of course, it's going to be the two biggest cities, New York and Los Angeles, but I think there's more to this. Los Angeles is the second biggest city in the country, and there's an absurd amount of freeways throughout the extensive metropolitan area. This has resulted in terrible traffic on those freeways, and there isn't anything the city can do. It's too big for its own good, and everything is a mess. I fully believe that if New York was made in this way with the freeways in mind for everything, the traffic there would be absolutely absurd, like nothing we see in this country. And I'm so incredibly glad that that isn't the case. Another major difference is the mountains. On the West Coast, cities have to deal with mountains, and they affect everything in development. You have to build around the mountains because they aren't going to move. Cities like San Francisco are extremely limited because of this. It results in worse traffic, higher housing prices, and so much more. The mountains play a role in everything. You just don't see that on the East Coast. Sure, Miami has to deal with the Everglades, but that's a whole different thing. The Appalachians are too far inland to play a major factor in any of these eastern cities near the coast, so it's nowhere near the same amount of importance. Finally, I wanted to talk about the two most iconic highways in the East and West. For the East, we see the Blue Ridge Parkway. I already have a video on this highway that I uploaded recently, so if you want a very detailed look at it, check that video out. But simply, it's a connector between the Great Smoky Mountains National Park and Shenandoah National Park. It keeps a very rural feel by avoiding urban areas and major intersections, which has made it an iconic drive. In the West, we have the Pacific Coast Highway. This highway runs in two different sections, the first being in California for the more iconic drive along the Pacific Ocean. You've seen pictures of this drive before, and it's seriously like no other. Certain portions are just absurd. In the farther north section of the highway, instead of being California State Route 1, it's US 101. This highway is beautiful in a different way. It's more forested, and obviously has more of a Pacific Northwest feel. Personally, I prefer this more northern section, because this region of the country has always been more to my liking, and there's just so much going on. Either way, though, it's absolutely stunning. There are so many differences that I'm not able to go over, but I think in this video I've made clear the extremely important comparisons to be made between one side of the country and the other. America is so incredibly interesting, and it fascinates me that on either coastline there are so many similarities and yet so many differences. Thanks for watching. Thank you to the members this week: Uncouver, Pol Pot's Pie Hole, Blang, Christopher DeAngelis, JL, United States Railroad Crossing, Darkbird, Obigrad, Elijah Pass, Big Pasty, Jeremy Crone, Wolfling73, Snyder Schwein, Florida, Jake, Somnam Woods, Stormy Night, Nikita Martinov, Haystack, Benjamin Whiting, Ryan Devins, Hazev the Wolf, Jake Holloway, Dominic Psyche, Rosebud4, and Bryson. I appreciate you all so much. If you want to become a member, the link is down in the description below, or you can click the join button next to the subscribe button. It's just another way to help me out. All of this money is just going straight into my savings to help me in the future. It's always appreciated, and it helps me out a ton. Thank you.